The rhythmic hum of environmental systems was Eli's only companion as he hunched over his workstation, fingers dancing across holographic diagrams of the colony's power grid. The night shift suited him: fewer people, fewer expectations, fewer awkward conversations. For years on this frozen outpost had taught him the value of solitude. Outside his viewport, the planet's 3 moons cast a pale blue glow across the crystalline ice field stretching to the horizon. Beautiful, yet utterly hostile to human life. Eli took a sip of synthetic coffee, grimacing at the familiar artificial aftertaste. The colony administrators had promised real coffee beans in the next supply shipment, a luxury that couldn't come soon enough. As the colony's lead power systems engineer, he could have requested preferential treatment, but Eli had never been one to leverage his position for personal gain. The soft knock at his door came at precisely 0:17 by the colony's standardized time. At first, he thought he'd imagined it, a phantom sound born from fatigue and isolation. But then it came again, more insistent this time. Visitors after midnight were unprecedented. The tight scheduling of the colony left little room for social calls, especially during sleeping hours. Eli closed his diagrams with a swipe and moved cautiously to the door, wondering if there had been some emergency with the grid that required his immediate attention. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a tall, slender figure silhouetted against the dim corridor lighting. The visitor's skin held a faint opalescent sheen, delicate patterns pulsing beneath the surface with each breath, unmistakably Valari. "Aurenia," Eli said, unable to hide his surprise. The Valari cultural observer regarded him with large, almond-shaped eyes that reflected the artificial light like twin galaxies. Her typically composed demeanor was absent, replaced by something Eli had never witnessed in any Valari: vulnerability. "Engineer Eli," she said, her voice carrying that distinctive melodic cadence that all Valari speech had, like distant wind chimes caught in a gentle breeze. "I apologize for this unscheduled interaction." Eli had worked alongside Aurenia for nearly 8 months. As the Valari representative assigned to observe human technological practices, she attended his team meetings, documented his work, and occasionally asked precise, technical questions. Always professional, always distant, always wrapped in that air of serene detachment that characterized her species. Tonight, something was different. "Is everything all right?" he asked, suddenly conscious of his rumpled work clothes and the stubble darkening his jaw. Aurenia's gaze dropped momentarily, her slender fingers intertwining in what he recognized as a gesture of discomfort. She began, then paused, searching for words. "I can't sleep." The confession seemed to cost her something, as though admitting weakness violated some unspoken Valari principle. Eli waited, sensing there was more. "Can I stay close to you tonight?" she finally asked, looking up to meet his eyes directly. No words, just closeness. The request hung in the space between them, unexpected and complex. In the 8 months of their professional relationship, they had never touched, not even accidentally. The Valari were known for their rigid personal boundaries, their aversion to physical contact with other species. "I don't understand," Eli said honestly. Aurenia's luminescent patterns flickered in what he recognized as emotional turbulence, rare for her kind, who prided themselves on emotional regulation. "You don't need to understand yet," she whispered. "Just, please." Something in her plea reached through Eli's practiced isolation. He stepped aside, allowing her to enter his small quarters. The door slid closed behind her, sealing them together in his private space, territory no Valari had entered before. Aurenia stood uncertainly in the center of the room, her tall frame elegant even in discomfort. Without speaking, she moved to the small seating area near the viewport, gracefully folding herself onto the floor beside his worn reading chair rather than taking the second chair opposite. Eli hesitated, then settled into his chair. The heater hummed softly, fighting against the perpetual cold of the planet. After a moment, Aurenia reached for the spare thermal blanket draped over the chair's arm. She wrapped it around her shoulders, her body trembling slightly, not from cold, he realized, but from emotions she seemed barely able to contain. They sat in silence. Minutes stretched into an hour. The stars shifted in their slow dance across the viewport. Eli waited, expecting explanation, demands, something, but Aurenia simply sat beside his chair, her eyes fixed on the stars, occasionally closing as though absorbing the simple presence of another being. Gradually, her trembling subsided. Her breathing synchronized with his. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin stabilized into a gentle, steady glow. And in that strange, wordless communion, something changed between them. Something fundamental and irreversible. By morning, when the artificial dawn would break across the colony, Eli knew his orderly, solitary existence would never be quite the same again. 3 nights passed before Orenia returned. Each evening after his shift, Eli found himself pausing at small noises, glancing toward the door more frequently than usual. By the 3rd night, he had convinced himself that the strange encounter had been a singular anomaly, perhaps some Valari cultural research experiment that he would never fully understand. But at midnight exactly, the gentle knock came again. This time, when he opened the door, Orenia stood more composed, her luminescent patterns glowing in stable, measured pulses. She wore the traditional Valari outer garment, a flowing, iridescent robe that caught the light in hypnotic patterns. "May I enter?" she asked, her voice carrying the formal tone he was accustomed to from their professional interactions. Eli stepped aside, admitting her to his quarters. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." "I was uncertain as well," she admitted, moving to the same spot she had occupied during her first visit, the floor beside his reading chair. "What happened between us was unexpected." Eli took his seat, noticing that he had unconsciously tidied his quarters, even brewing a fresh cup of tea in anticipation of her arrival. "You said that night that I didn't need to understand yet. I think I'd like to understand now." Orenia's gaze remained fixed on the viewport, where ice crystals danced in the atmosphere, catching the moonlight in brief, brilliant flashes. "In my culture," she began carefully, "physical proximity is sacred. It is not given casually." "We haven't touched," Eli pointed out gently. "Proximity," she clarified, "does not require contact. It is about sharing space, breath, energy." Her fingers traced patterns in the air between them. "Valari do not have your human concept of personal space as something that can be invaded. We have shared space, a conscious decision to allow another being into our energetic field." Eli watched as she unwrapped a small object from a pocket in her robe, a crystalline stone that caught the light in unusual ways. She placed it on the floor between them. "This is a proximity stone," she explained. "When placed between 2 beings, it measures the harmony of their energy fields. Among my people, it is used in sacred ceremonies to determine compatibility for deep connections." "Like marriage?" Eli asked, fascinated despite himself. Orenia's patterns flickered in what he had come to recognize as mild amusement. "Not exactly. Marriage is a legal contract. This measures something more fundamental. The stone has been in my family for 7 generations." She fell silent, watching the stone. After several minutes, Eli noticed that the crystal had begun to emit a faint, pulsing glow that matched the rhythm of Orenia's own luminescent patterns. "What does it mean?" he asked softly. "It means you are compatible with me," she said simply. "It means that when I am near you, my energy field stabilizes. It means that of all the humans in this colony, your presence provides the most harmony." Eli studied her face, the elegant angles, the subtle shifts of light beneath her skin. "Is that why you came that night? Because of this stone?" "No," she replied, meeting his gaze directly. "I came because I could not bear the solitude any longer. The stone merely confirms what I already sensed." She hesitated, then added, "Among my people, to request proximity is to show great trust. It is to make oneself vulnerable." "And that's hard for you," Eli observed. "Being vulnerable." "It is, contrary to my training," she admitted. "As a cultural observer, I am taught to maintain distance, to observe without affecting, to document without engaging." Her patterns shifted to a deeper blue. "I have failed in my professional duty." Eli considered this. "Why me? There are over 200 humans in this colony." Orenia's hand moved closer to his, not touching, but near enough that he could feel the strange warmth that all Valari seemed to radiate. "Because you understand solitude without fearing it. Because you work with energy systems, and you understand flow and connection." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Because sometimes, when you think no one is watching, you look at the stars with the same longing I feel." The confession hung between them, intimate and raw. Eli felt a strange tightness in his chest, the unfamiliar sensation of another being seen through his carefully constructed isolation. "In my culture," she continued, "physical closeness is reserved only for those we deeply trust. It is not casual, as it seems to be among humans." "What exactly are you asking of me?" Eli questioned, needing clarity. "I am asking to be close to you," she said simply. To share space. To exist together, without the masks we wear among others. The request was both innocent and profound. Eli felt the weight of it, the cultural significance, the trust being placed in him. No expectations, he clarified. Just proximity. Yes, she confirmed. Although, her patterns flickered in what might have been embarrassment. In time, if harmony continues to grow, Valari proximity can evolve. Physical touch has different meanings for us. It is not casual, but it is not always romantic either. It is connection. Outside, the wind howled against the reinforced windows, a reminder of the harsh environment beyond their shared space. Inside, the heater hummed steadily, creating a pocket of warmth within the cold station. Would you like some tea? Eli asked, gesturing to the steaming pot. Yes, Orenia said, her patterns brightening. I would like that very much. As he poured the amber liquid into 2 cups, Eli realized that for the first time in years, the silence of his quarters no longer felt empty. It felt shared, a different kind of silence altogether. When he handed Orenia her cup, their fingers brushed briefly. The contact, though minimal, sent a strange, pleasant current through him. Orenia's patterns flared brilliantly for just a moment, confirming she had felt it too. That, she said softly, cradling the cup in her elegant hands, was not supposed to happen so soon. But the slight curve of her lips suggested she wasn't entirely displeased by this unexpected development. The visits became a ritual. Every 3rd night, precisely at midnight, Orenia would appear at Eli's door. Their time together evolved into a delicate dance of discovery, never discussed during daylight hours, never acknowledged in public spaces where other colonists might observe. During the day, engineer Eli and cultural observer Orenia maintained their professional distance. At night, they slowly uncovered each other's worlds. The Valari don't have a word for loneliness, Orenia explained one night, as they sat shoulder to shoulder on the floor, watching the aurora borealis ripple across the night sky. The closest concept we have translates to disconnection from the collective energy. Eli considered this. Yet you felt lonely enough to come to me. I did not recognize it as loneliness until I observed humans experiencing it, she admitted. Your species has remarkable emotional vocabulary. You name feelings I never knew existed. She had grown comfortable enough to lean slightly against him, their shoulders touching. Each point of contact between them felt charged with significance, a sacred boundary crossed by mutual consent. Most Valari would consider my behavior inappropriate, she said quietly. Physical proximity outside family units or formal bonding rituals is unconventional. Is that why you never acknowledge me during the day? Eli asked. The question had been bothering him for weeks. During community gatherings or work sessions, Orenia's gaze would slide past him as though he were a stranger. Her pattern shifted to a deeper blue, regret, he had learned. I am being watched by my superiors. If they suspected the nature of our interactions, I would be reassigned immediately. They don't approve of fraternization with humans? They don't approve of emotional entanglement during observation assignments, she clarified. We are meant to study, not connect. Eli absorbed this information silently. Outside, a snowstorm was brewing, ice crystals battering against the reinforced windows. The colony would be on lockdown by morning. All non-essential personnel confined to quarters until the storm passed. Tell me about your home, he said finally, changing the subject. Not the scientific description in the colony database. Tell me what it feels like. Orenia's patterns brightened, shifting to gold and amber tones. It is alive. The entire planet pulses with energy that responds to our presence. The soil beneath our feet warms when we walk upon it. The air shifts to accommodate our breathing patterns. Her voice grew wistful. The communal dwellings are built around ancient trees that grow in perfect spirals, their branches creating natural chambers where families share proximity. It sounds beautiful, Eli said, trying to imagine a world so fundamentally different from the sterile precision of the colony or the technological congestion of Earth. It is, she agreed. But it can also be oppressive. The collective consciousness of my people allows little room for individual experience. Her hand found his in the dim light, fingers intertwining, a bold gesture by Valari standards. This, what we are sharing, would be impossible there. Eli felt the weight of her admission. Is that why you volunteered for this assignment? To escape the collective? I did not know what I was seeking until I found it. She answered, her gaze meeting his. The quiet spaces between your words. The solitude that doesn't demand to be filled. The heating system switched to its night cycle, the ambient temperature dropping slightly. Aurenia moved closer, her natural warmth radiating through the thin fabric of her observer's uniform. "Among my people," she murmured, "this level of proximity would be considered an expression of deep trust. Almost a declaration." Eli's heart rate quickened. "A declaration of what?" "Intent," she said simply. "To explore the possibility of something more permanent than observation, more intimate than professional cooperation." The implications hung between them like the charged particles in the aurora outside, beautiful, dangerous, ephemeral. "And what about among humans?" she asked, curious. "What does this level of proximity signify?" Eli considered carefully. "It depends on the humans. For some, physical closeness is casual, meaningless. For others—" He paused, aware of the cultural chasm between them. "For me, it's not something I offer lightly." Aurenia studied him with those galaxy-reflecting eyes. "The proximity stone glows brighter each time we meet," she observed. "My people would consider this significant." "And what do you consider it?" Eli asked. "Frightening," she admitted. "And exhilarating." A notification chimed on Eli's comm unit. The storm warning had been upgraded to a full alert. The colony would be in emergency protocol by morning. Non-essential movement between sectors would be restricted until further notice. "You should return to the Volari quarters," Eli said reluctantly. "Once the storm protocol activates, you'll be locked out of your sector." Aurenia didn't move. "What if I chose to remain here?" The question carried implications beyond the practical concerns of the approaching storm. To stay overnight would cross yet another boundary, create another level of intimacy that would be difficult to undo. "Your superiors," Eli began, "cannot monitor movement during storm protocols," she finished. "For the duration of the emergency, I would be unobserved." The possibility hung between them like the fragile crystal still pulsing on the floor, an opportunity for something deeper than their midnight conversations had yet allowed. Eli made his decision. Rising from the floor, he moved to his storage unit and extracted a second sleeping platform, extending it beside his own. "You can stay," he said simply. "No expectations. Just proximity." Aurenia's patterns rippled with what he now recognized as pleasure. "No expectations," she agreed, though her gaze held promises neither of them had yet voiced. Just being close. As the storm intensified outside, they prepared for their first night together, not as engineer and observer, but as two beings seeking connection across the vast differences of their worlds. And in that moment, Eli realized that something fundamental had shifted between them, something that could never be undone, no matter what morning brought. The storm lasted 3 days, 3 days of suspended colony operations, 3 days of Aurenia and Eli sharing the confined space of his quarters without interruption or pretense. 3 days that transformed everything between them. On the second night, as they sat watching the ice particles swirl in violent patterns outside the viewport, Aurenia took Eli's hand and placed it gently against the side of her neck, where her luminescent patterns pulsed strongest. "This is how my people share emotions," she explained softly. "Through direct energy transfer." Beneath his fingertips, Eli felt a strange, rhythmic vibration, not quite a pulse, but something more complex, as though multiple currents of energy were flowing beneath her skin. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced, both alien and profoundly intimate. "What am I feeling?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the howling wind outside. "Me," she said simply, without barriers. The luminescent patterns beneath his touch intensified, spreading down her arms and across her chest in intricate, flowing designs he had never seen before. The room seemed to fill with a subtle blue light emanating from her skin. "This is how we connect," Aurenia whispered. "It is deeper than your human physical intimacy, though different." Guided by instinct, Eli brought his other hand to cup her face. Her eyes, those impossibly deep, star-reflecting eyes, fluttered closed at his touch. "Show me," he murmured. Aurenia's hands rose to frame his face, mirroring his gesture. The contact sent waves of sensation through him, not quite pleasure, not quite emotion, but something that existed in the spaces between known experiences. Images and feelings that weren't his own flowed into his consciousness, the warm, living soil of her homeworld beneath bare feet, the sensation of communal energy flowing through connected minds, the first moment she had seen him, working alone in the power station, surrounded by the human technology he understood so intuitively. And deeper still, her loneliness, her doubt, her growing fascination with him that had culminated in that first midnight knock at his door. "This is forbidden," she breathed, her patterns shifting to deep crimson. "Sharing energy with other species is taboo." Yet she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers traced the contours of his face with a reverence that made his heart race. Where their skin touched, Eli felt the strange harmonic vibration intensify, as though their separate energies were learning to resonate together. "Why risk it?" he asked, needing to understand the magnitude of what she was offering, what she was risking. "Because in all my observations of humans, I have never encountered one whose energy calls to mine as yours does." Her voice carried a vulnerability he had never heard from her before. "Because my duty as an observer has become compromised by my need to be near you." "Because..." Her words faltered as Eli leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their foreheads touched, a gesture that among Valari symbolized trust beyond measure. Aurenia trembled against him. "Because I cannot pretend any longer," she finished. The proximity stone between them glowed with intense brilliance, casting long shadows across the walls of the small quarters. Outside, the storm raged unabated, but within their shared space, something new and fragile was taking form. "There is a ritual among my people," Aurenia said softly. "When two beings discover deep energy compatibility, they may form a connection that transcends physical proximity, a bond that allows for closeness, even when separated by distance." "A psychic link?" Eli asked, still cradling her face. She smiled at the simplification. "Not thoughts, precisely. More like awareness, emotional presence." "And you want this with me?" The question was both odd and uncertain. "I do," she admitted. "But such bonding is not casual among my people. It is significant, comparable to your human concept of lifelong commitment." The implications were enormous, not just for them personally, but potentially for human-Valari relations more broadly. No such bond had ever been documented between their species. "Your superiors would never approve," Eli said, voicing the concern that had shadowed their growing closeness from the beginning. "No," she agreed. "Which is why I have requested reassignment." The statement hit Eli like a physical blow. "You're leaving." Aurenia's patterns dimmed slightly. "I must. My proximity to you has compromised my objectivity beyond repair. If I remain as an observer, my superiors will eventually notice the changes in my energy patterns. They will investigate. They will discover us. And after reassignment, I have requested placement as a diplomatic liaison rather than an observer, a position that would allow for personal connections within proper protocols." Hope flared within him. "And was it granted?" "Not yet," she admitted. "The request is highly unusual. The committee will require time to decide." Eli absorbed this, understanding the risk she had taken merely by submitting such a request. "What happens if they refuse?" "Then I must choose," she said simply, "between my duty to my people and my desire for proximity with you." The word desire carried weight beyond its simple syllables. In her mouth, it became a declaration, a crossing of yet another boundary between them. Slowly, deliberately, Eli closed the remaining distance between them. Their lips met in a gesture that was human in form but imbued with Valari significance through the energy that flowed between them. Where their bodies connected, Aurenia's luminescent patterns flared brilliantly, casting the entire room in ethereal blue light. The kiss deepened, transforming into something neither wholly human nor wholly Valari, but uniquely their own, a bridge between worlds, intimate and profound. When they finally separated, Aurenia's patterns continued to pulse with unprecedented brightness. "That was..." she whispered. "I know," Eli responded, equally affected. Outside, the storm began to wane, the howling winds gradually subsiding into a gentler rhythm. Morning would bring the end of the emergency protocols. Reality would return, with all its complications and consequences. But for now, in the quiet aftermath of their shared vulnerability, something new had been created between them, something that transcended both their cultures, something neither had anticipated when Aurenia had first knocked on his door at midnight, seeking nothing more than to be close. The summons came without warning, a formal communication delivered to Eli's workstation during his shift. His presence was requested at the administrative hub, diplomatic sector, immediately. No explanation provided. As he made his way through the colony's curved corridors, Eli's mind raced with possibilities. It had been 2 weeks since the storm. 2 weeks since Aurenia had left his quarters and resumed her role as cultural observer with a new, careful distance between them in public spaces. Their midnight meetings had been suspended while her reassignment request was processed. The diplomatic sector was rarely accessed by technical personnel like himself. Its sleek, minimalist design contrasted sharply with the utilitarian corridors of the engineering section. Eli felt immediately out of place among the polished surfaces and formal attire of the diplomatic staff. Engineer Rowe, a crisp voice greeted him. Please follow me. He was led into a conference chamber where 3 figures waited: Commander Thornton, the human colony administrator; Elder Venerin, the Valari diplomatic chief; and between them, Aurenia. Her face composed in the serene mask of her professional role, though her luminescent patterns pulsed with subtle intensity. Engineer Rowe, Commander Thornton began without preamble. Are you aware of the nature of Observer Aurenia's recent reassignment request? Eli met Aurenia's gaze briefly before addressing the commander. I believe she requested transfer from observational to diplomatic duties. Indeed, Elder Venerin interjected, his deep voice resonating with the melodic undertones characteristic of older Valari. A most unusual request, particularly given her exemplary observational record. The tension in the room was palpable. Eli remained silent, waiting. More unusual still, Thornton continued, was her stated reasoning. She cited profound energy compatibility with a human subject as grounds for her request. The commander's eyes narrowed slightly. That human subject being you, Engineer Rowe. Eli felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. I see. Do you? Elder Venerin asked, his luminescent patterns shifting to a formal configuration Eli had never seen before. Do you understand the significance of such a claim among our people? Before Eli could formulate a response, Aurenia spoke. I have explained the cultural context to Engineer Rowe, she said, her voice steady despite the turbulent patterns beneath her skin. The decision to pursue energy compatibility assessment was mutual and informed. Thornton's eyebrows rose. Is this accurate, Engineer? Yes, Eli answered simply. There was no point in denial or elaboration. The truth of what had developed between him and Aurenia could not be reduced to colonial regulations or diplomatic protocols. Elder Venerin studied him intently. In all our years of coexistence with humans, no Valari has ever reported energy compatibility with your species. Many believe such resonance to be biologically impossible. Apparently not, Thornton remarked dryly. Indeed, the elder agreed. Which is why Observer Aurenia's request has generated significant interest among our Council of Elders. Eli's gaze shifted to Aurenia, who remained perfectly composed despite the scrutiny. Only he could see the subtle fluctuations in her patterns that betrayed her anxiety. Interest? Eli asked cautiously. The possibility of deeper energy compatibility between our species has diplomatic implications, Venerin explained. If what Observer Aurenia reports is accurate, it suggests possibilities for connection between our peoples that were previously unconsidered. Commander Thornton cleared her throat. To be blunt, Engineer Rowe, what began as a personnel matter has evolved into a diplomatic opportunity. The Valari Council has approved Aurenia's reassignment, not just as a liaison, but as the head of a new cultural integration initiative. Eli struggled to process the implications. And what exactly would this initiative involve? You, Aurenia said softly, speaking directly to him for the first time. If you're willing. Elder Venerin elaborated. Observer Aurenia has proposed a formal study of human Valari energy compatibility, beginning with your documented case and potentially expanding to include other compatible pairs should they be discovered. You want to study us? Eli asked, uncomfortable with the clinical framing of what had developed between them. We want to learn from you, Aurenia corrected gently. From what we have discovered together. Commander Thornton leaned forward. The colony administration sees substantial benefits in improved human-Valari relations, Engineer Rowe. This initiative could transform our coexistence from mere cooperation to genuine integration. The subtext was clear. What had begun as a private connection had become politically significant. Their personal relationship now carried the weight of interspecies diplomacy. And if I decline? Eli asked, needing to understand his options. The initiative would proceed without you, Elder Venerin stated matter-of-factly. Observer Aurenia's reassignment has been approved regardless of your participation, though the scope of the project would necessarily be reduced. Eli looked to Aurenia, searching her expression for guidance. Despite her professional composure, he could read the subtle cues in her patterns: hope, fear, and something deeper that had grown between them during those quiet midnight hours. "May I speak with Aurenia privately?" he requested. After a moment's consideration, both Thornton and Venerin nodded. They exited the chamber, leaving Eli and Aurenia alone for the first time since the storm. As soon as the door closed, Aurenia's formal demeanor dissolved. She moved to him with fluid grace, her hands finding his with desperate certainty. "I did not intend this," she said urgently. "When I submitted my request, I only sought permission for us to continue what we had begun. I never imagined they would elevate it to a diplomatic initiative." Eli entwined his fingers with hers, feeling the now familiar resonance between them. "It's a lot of pressure to put on, whatever this is between us." "It is," she agreed, "but it also provides protection for us. Legitimacy. We would no longer need to hide." The proximity stone she always carried glowed softly from within her pocket, responding to their closeness even here, in this formal diplomatic space. "What do you want, Aurenia?" Eli asked, cutting through the politics to the heart of the matter. "Not what your elders want, or what benefits the colony. What do you want?" Her pattern shifted to the deep, resonant blue that he had come to associate with her most honest emotions. "I want to continue discovering what exists between us," she said simply. "Without fear, without hiding, without division between my duty and my heart." "Your heart," Eli repeated, the human metaphor strange but fitting from her lips. "Yes," she confirmed. "My people have a different term for the center of emotional being, but I believe heart captures it well enough." Eli smiled, recognizing how much she had absorbed from human culture even as she had taught him about her own. They had already begun the process of integration without realizing it, building a shared language, a shared understanding. "If we do this," he said carefully, "we won't just be Aurenia and Eli anymore. We'll be representatives of something larger." "We already are," she countered. "From the moment I knocked on your door at midnight, we became something neither of our peoples had imagined possible." Outside the conference room, the colony continued its rhythms, humans and Volari working side by side yet fundamentally separate, divided by biology, culture, and assumption. Within this room, that separation had already begun to dissolve. Eli reached up to touch the luminescent patterns along Aurenia's temple, feeling the energy pulse beneath his fingertips. "Then let's show them what's possible." Aurenia's patterns flared brilliantly at his touch, her eyes reflecting the stars even in this windowless room. "Together," she agreed. When Commander Thornton and Elder Venerin returned, they found the human and Volari standing side by side, their decision evident in their posture and proximity. "Engineer Rowe has agreed to participate in the initiative," Aurenia announced formally. "Excellent," Venerin responded, his own patterns shifting to indicate satisfaction. "The council will be pleased." Commander Thornton nodded briskly. "I'll have the necessary paperwork processed immediately. You'll both be reassigned to the diplomatic sector effective tomorrow." As the administrative details were discussed around them, Eli felt Aurenia's hand brush against his, a subtle gesture that would have gone unnoticed by most observers, but which carried profound significance between them. In that touch was the promise of all that lay ahead, the challenges of bridging their different worlds, the discovery of new forms of closeness, the transformation of what had begun as a midnight request for simple proximity into something that might reshape relations between their peoples. Later that night, as the colony's artificial lighting dimmed to simulate dusk, Eli heard the familiar knock at his door. When he opened it, Aurenia stood there, not trembling or uncertain as she had been on that first night, but radiant with possibility. "It's not midnight yet," Eli observed with a smile. "I couldn't wait," she admitted. "Tomorrow everything changes. Tonight." She stepped into his quarters with the grace that had captivated him from the beginning. "Tonight I just want to be close to you, one last time, before we become symbols rather than simply ourselves." As the door closed behind her, sealing them in their private world one final time, the proximity stone in her pocket glowed with unprecedented brilliance, bright enough to cast shadows across the walls, bright enough to illuminate the path they had chosen together. By morning, they would step into their new roles as bridges between worlds. But for tonight, they were simply two beings who had discovered that even across the vast differences of biology, culture, and origin, the desire to be close, truly close, transcended all boundaries. In the gentle silence of Eli's quarters, as Aurenia curled against him with the trust that had begun their journey, he realized that she had been right from the beginning. She had knocked on his door at midnight wanting only one thing, to be close. And in the granting of that simple request, everything between them, and perhaps between their peoples, had been transformed forever.